Hey everyone, and welcome back. Today we're going to do a deep dive into something pretty cool in the world of electric vehicles.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, in India. This time it's not just about the cars,
Right.
but how a new business model is changing the game.
Okay.
So we're diving into this article from the Indian Express called "As Windsor Gets a Buzz Boost, MG's Sales Pitch Resonates with New EV Converts from Small Towns."
Wow.
Yeah, and get this, they're seeing a surge in electric car sales in
Okay.
places you might not expect.
Hmm.
Yeah, so
That's interesting.
it's not the usual suspects.
Right. Yeah. What's really fascinating to me is how MG Motor India
Yeah.
is tapping into a market that's often overlooked when it comes to EVs.
Yeah.
Smaller towns and cities.
Yeah.
The article highlights how even those who were once like big fans of traditional petrol cars are making the switch.
Wow.
And it all boils down to this innovative approach called battery as a service.
BaaS.
Yeah.
Okay, so what is this battery as service all about? It sounds like something you'd get at a spa, not with a car.
Well, it's certainly relaxing the anxieties around EV ownership.
Okay.
Essentially, with BaaS, you're buying the car without the battery.
Oh.
The battery is treated as a separate entity that you subscribe to,
Hmm.
kind of like a monthly mobile phone plan.
Okay. I think I'm starting to get it. So instead of paying a huge upfront cost for the battery,
Yeah.
which can be, what, almost half the price of the entire car?
Yeah, the article says it can be a significant chunk. Yeah,
You're spreading that cost out over time.
exactly. That's the key appeal, especially in these smaller towns where price sensitivity is a big factor.
Okay.
And MG Motor India has seen incredible success with this model.
Oh, wow.
Their new electric car, the Windsor, is flying off the lots, thanks in part to BaaS. The article specifically mentions places like Panipat, Sonipat, and Bathinda. Not exactly the tech hubs you might associate with EVs, right?
Yeah, that's what surprised me, too. You usually think of electric vehicles appealing to a more urban, tech-savvy crowd.
Yeah.
It sounds like this BaaS model is changing the whole perception of who an EV buyer can be,
It really is. And it's not just about making the cars themselves more affordable.
right?
The article points out that MG Motor is also partnering with more and more finance companies to make these battery subscriptions even more accessible.
They're really trying to remove all the barriers to entry.
So it's almost like they're creating a whole new ecosystem around these EVs,
Yeah.
right? Making it easier to not just buy the car,
Yeah,
but manage the battery part of it too.
that's a great way to put it. It's like they're building a complete package to attract those who may have never even considered an EV before.
It all sounds pretty genius.
Yeah.
But is there a catch? I mean, paying a subscription for the battery forever, wouldn't that end up costing more in the long run?
That's a good question, and it's something the article touches upon.
Okay.
MG Motor claims that their subscription plans are actually cheaper.
Then the equivalent cost of petrol if you were driving a comparable petrol car.
Okay.
Of course, you have to factor in your driving habits and the specific subscription plan you choose.
Right.
But on the surface, it does seem like they're trying to make it a financially sound decision as well.
So how do these plans work in practice? Do they offer different options based on how much you drive? For example, if I'm someone who only uses their car for short trips around town,
Yeah.
would I be paying the same as someone who's doing a lot of highway driving?
That's where it gets really interesting, and the article gives us some insight into that.
Okay.
They have a base subscription fee, which, if I remember correctly, covers you for around 1,500 kilometers a month.
Okay.
And then there are options to pay a little extra if you go over that limit.
So it's like a pay-as-you-go model for your car battery.
Exactly.
It makes sense. I mean, it wouldn't be fair for someone driving a few hundred kilometers a month to be paying the same as someone clocking up thousands.
Exactly.
They're trying to make it as flexible and tailored to individual needs as possible. And remember, we're not just talking about cost savings here. The article also points out the potential environmental benefits of wider EV adoption. Fewer petrol-guzzling cars on the road means cleaner air for everyone.
Now, that is a huge win for everyone, especially in India with its growing concerns about air pollution. But you mentioned earlier that MG Motor has even bigger plans for the future.
Yeah.
What exactly are they cooking up?
Well, imagine this. You pull into a station not to fill up with petrol, but to swap out your depleted battery for a fully charged one, all in a matter of minutes.
Really?
The article hints at this possibility, and it's something MG Motors sees as a potential game changer down the line.
Wow. That would be revolutionary. But realistically, how far off is this battery swapping technology. It sounds like something straight out of a sci-fi movie.
It's definitely not science fiction anymore.
Okay.
The technology is already being tested in various parts of the world.
However, the article does point out that widespread adoption in India is probably still a few years away. It's not just about the technology itself.
Right.
You need the infrastructure,
Yeah.
the network of swapping stations, and the standardization of batteries across different models.
So it's a bit like the early days of mobile phones where every manufacturer had their own proprietary charger,
Yeah,
and you couldn't just use any charger with any phone.
precisely. There needs to be a concerted effort from car manufacturers and industry stakeholders to establish common standards and protocols for battery swapping to become a viable reality.
But if they can pull it off, it would be a game changer. It would remove one of the biggest obstacles to EV adoption, which is the fear of running out of charge, especially for those who don't have the luxury of charging their car at home.
Absolutely. And it could also open up new possibilities for business models. Imagine a scenario where you don't even own the battery. You simply pay a subscription fee for access to a network of swapping stations. You could drive any compatible EV and just swap out your battery whenever needed. It's like the ultimate form of mobility as a service.
Wow. That's a fascinating concept. It's almost like taking the BaaS model to the next level.
Yeah.
Instead of subscribing to a specific battery, you're subscribing to the ability to access energy whenever and wherever you need it.
It's a really intriguing idea, and it highlights how this whole shift towards electric mobility
Yeah.
is not just about the cars themselves. It's about reimagining the entire ecosystem around transportation.
It's about challenging long-held assumptions about car ownership and exploring new ways to meet people's transportation needs in a more sustainable and efficient way.
Yeah.
This whole deep dive is making me think about the bigger picture.
Right.
We started by talking about this innovative business model for electric cars in India,
Uh-huh.
but it feels like we're uncovering a much broader trend here.
You're absolutely right. This is about more than just cars. This is about the rise of the subscription economy,
Oh,
the shift from ownership to access,
right.
and the potential for these new models to disrupt industries far beyond the automotive sector.
And MG Motor, with its BaaS model, is right at the forefront of this movement. They're not just selling cars, they're pioneering a new way of thinking about mobility.
And as we've discussed, the implications extend far beyond the realm of transportation.
Yeah.
We're seeing this subscription model pop up in various sectors,
Right.
from entertainment and software to consumer goods and services.
It's like it's everywhere.
Yeah.
It's a trend that's reshaping our relationship with the things we use and consume.
Absolutely.
It makes me wonder if this is just the beginning. Are we on the verge of a subscription revolution? And if so, what does that mean for the future of consumption, ownership, and the way we live our lives?
Those are some big questions and ones that we'll continue to explore as we delve deeper into this topic.
I'm ready to dive in. But I think it's time for a little break before we get into those thought-provoking questions. We'll be right back with the next part of our deep dive, where we'll wrap things up and leave you with some final thoughts to ponder.
Okay, so we've established that this battery as a service model is shaking things up in the EV market.
Yeah.
But let's zoom back in on MG Motor and their strategy with the Windsor.
Okay.
The article mentions some specifics about their pricing right.
Right. They highlight the starting price for the Windsor with the BAT model at 9.99 lakh rupees.
Okay.
That's significantly less than the 13.5 lakh you'd pay if you were buying the car with the battery included.
Wow, that's a pretty substantial difference. It really puts into perspective how much of the overall cost is tied up in that battery.
Exactly. And the article's author, Sukop Sharma, goes on to explain that MG Motor is making some pretty bold claims about the affordability of their subscription plans.
Okay.
They're saying that for a lot of drivers, these monthly payments will actually work out to be cheaper.
Than what they'd spend on petrol for a comparable petrol car.
That's a compelling argument, especially with petrol prices being so volatile these days.
Yeah.
But I'm curious, do they mention anything about the types of subscription plans they offer? You mentioned earlier that there's a base plan with a mileage limit,
Right.
but are there other options?
The article doesn't delve into a ton of specifics about the various plans,
Okay.
but it does suggest that there's a degree of flexibility.
Okay.
It sounds like you can choose a plan that aligns with your estimated monthly mileage. So if you know you're a high mileage driver, you can opt for a plan with a higher limit.
Uh-huh.
And if you're more of a casual driver, you can stick with the base plan.
That makes sense. It wouldn't be very appealing if everyone was locked into a one-size-fits-all plan.
Right.
But even with all this flexibility, I can't help but wonder if there are any potential downsides to this BaaS model. I mean, it sounds great on the surface, but
Yeah.
are there any hidden costs or long-term implications that people need to be aware of?
That's where things get a little more nuanced,
Yeah.
and it's something worth thinking about.
Yeah.
The article doesn't dive deep into the potential downsides,
Yeah.
but here are a few things that come to mind. First, you're essentially logged into this subscription for the lifetime of the car.
Okay.
So if battery technology rapidly advances and prices drop significantly,
Yeah.
you might end up paying more over the long term compared to someone who bought the battery outright.
Ah, I see. So there's a bit of a gamble involved.
Yeah.
Hoping that the subscription price stays competitive over time.
Right. And then there's the question of battery degradation. Batteries do have a limited lifespan,
Right.
and their performance can decline over time. So what happens when your subscribed battery starts to lose its capacity?
Yeah.
Does MG Motor simply replace it with a new one? And if so, is there an additional cost involved? These are all questions that potential buyers would need to clarify with MG Motor before committing to the BaaS model.
That's a good point. It's important to remember that there's no such thing as a free lunch. While the BaaS model offers a lot of advantages,
Yeah,
it also comes with its own set of considerations and potential risks.
exactly. It's
Yeah.
all about weighing the pros and cons and deciding what works best for your individual needs and circumstances.
But let's shift gears a bit and talk about that futuristic element we touched upon earlier.
Okay.
The possibility of battery swapping stations. The article mentions that MG Motor sees this as a potential next step, right?
Yes, and it's a concept that has the potential to revolutionize EV ownership.
Wow.
Imagine a world where you could simply swap out your depleted battery for a fully charged one in a matter of minutes.
It would be like the EV equivalent of filling up your petrol tank.
Yeah.
No more range anxiety,
Yeah.
no more waiting around for hours while your car charges. It sounds almost too good to be true.
Well, like any new technology, there are challenges to overcome. Building out a robust network of swapping stations would require significant investment and infrastructure development.
Yeah.
And then there's the question of battery standardization. You'd need a system where batteries are interchangeable across different car models, which is not the case right now.
So it's a bit like the early days of mobile phones where every manufacturer had their own proprietary charger,
Yeah,
and you couldn't just use any charger with any phone.
precisely. There needs to be a concerted effort from car manufacturers and industry stakeholders to establish common standards and protocols for battery swapping to become a viable reality.
But if they can pull it off, it would be a game changer. It would remove one of the biggest obstacles to EV adoption,
Yeah,
which is the fear of running out of charge, especially for those who don't have the luxury of charging their car at home.
absolutely. And it could also open up new possibilities for business models.
Okay.
Imagine a scenario where you don't even own the battery. You
Mhm.
simply pay a subscription fee for access to a network of swapping stations. You could drive any compatible EV and just swap out your battery whenever needed. It's like the ultimate form of mobility as a service.
Wow. That's a fascinating concept. It's almost like taking the BaaS model to the next level. Instead of subscribing to a specific battery, you're subscribing to the ability to access energy whenever and wherever you need it.
It's a really intriguing idea, and it highlights how this whole shift towards electric mobility is not just about the cars themselves.
Right.
It's about reimagining the entire ecosystem around transportation.
It's about challenging long-held assumptions about car ownership
Yeah.
and exploring new ways to meet people's transportation needs in a more sustainable and efficient way. This whole deep dive is making me think about the bigger picture. We started by talking about this innovative business model for electric cars in India, but it feels like we're uncovering a much broader trend here.
You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
This is about more than just cars. This is about the rise of the subscription economy, the shift from ownership to access,
Right.
and the potential for these new models to disrupt industries far beyond the automotive sector.
And MG Motor, with its BaaS model, is right at the forefront of this movement. They're not just selling cars. They're pioneering a new way of thinking about mobility.
And as we've discussed, the implications extend far beyond the realm of transportation. We're seeing this subscription model pop up in various sectors,
Right.
from entertainment and software to consumer goods and services.
It's like it's everywhere.
It is.
It's a trend that's reshaping our relationship with the things we use and consume.
Absolutely.
It makes me wonder if this is just the beginning. Are we on the verge of a subscription revolution? And if so, what does that mean for the future of consumption,
Right.
ownership, and the way we live our lives?
Those are some big questions and ones that we'll continue to explore as we delve deeper into this topic in our next segment.
All right, we're back, and I'm ready to keep going, wrap up our deep dive into this fascinating battery as a service trend
It is sad.
in the world of electric vehicles in India.
Yeah, it really is amazing, how what seemed like a straightforward look at an article about car sales has opened up like all these avenues of thought.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like we've gone from 0 to 60
Yeah.
in terms of the bigger picture here. It's really made me rethink not only how I view electric vehicles, but also how I approach the idea of ownership in general.
And that's like a key takeaway from this deep dive, I think.
Yeah.
It's about recognizing how innovative business models like this BaaS approach can drive significant shifts in consumer behavior and even like societal norms.
It's like MG Motor has thrown down the gauntlet, challenging the automotive industry and maybe even other sectors
Yeah.
to rethink the way they do things.
And the implications, as we've discussed, go far beyond just selling cars. It's
Mhm.
about promoting sustainability,
Mhm.
increasing accessibility, and creating a more flexible and convenient consumer experience.
It's exciting to think about the possibilities, but let's not sugarcoat things. We've
No.
talked about the potential benefits, but what about the potential downsides of this subscription model? Are there any risks or challenges that we need to be aware of?
You're right. It's important to approach this with a critical eye.
Yeah.
One potential concern is the long-term cost for consumers.
Okay.
As I mentioned earlier, if battery technology rapidly advances and prices drop,
Right.
those locked into a subscription might end up paying a premium compared to those who bought the battery outright.
So there's an element of uncertainty
Yeah.
and perhaps even a bit of a gamble involved.
Yeah, like betting on the future of battery technology.
It's like betting on the future of battery technology and hoping that subscription prices remain competitive.
And then there are questions about data privacy and control.
Aye.
With the subscription model, companies potentially have access to a lot of data about your usage habits.
Right.
How they use and protect that data is something consumers need to be aware of and scrutinize.
That's a great point. It's important to remember that convenience and flexibility often come at a price, and that price can sometimes be our privacy.
And let's not forget about the potential for these subscription models to exacerbate existing inequalities. What happens to those who can't afford even a modest monthly subscription? Do they get left behind in this new economy of access? These are questions that need to be addressed to ensure that these models benefit society as a whole and not just a select few.
You've raised some important points there. It's clear that while this subscription model offers a lot of potential, it's not a silver bullet solution.
Right.
There are trade-offs and challenges that need to be carefully considered.
Absolutely. It's crucial to approach these innovations with a balanced perspective, acknowledging both the exciting possibilities and the potential pitfalls.
This deep dive has been a real eye-opener. We started with an article about electric car sales in India,
Yeah.
and we've ended up exploring a much broader and more complex landscape of technological innovation changing consumer behaviors
Right.
and the potential for disruption across industries.
And isn't that the beauty of these deep dives? They take us on unexpected journeys, sparking curiosity and challenging us to think critically about the world around us.
So as we wrap up this electrifying conversation, what's the key takeaway you'd like to leave our listeners with?
I think it's this: embrace innovation, but do so with a discerning mind. Ask questions, weigh the pros and cons, and consider the broader implications. The future is being shaped by these new technologies and business models, and it's up to us to engage actively and thoughtfully to ensure that they lead to a more sustainable, equitable, and fulfilling future for all.
Well said. And for our listeners, we hope this deep dive has sparked your curiosity and inspired you to think differently about the world around you. Keep questioning, keep exploring, and as always, thanks for tuning in.